You want to write a story for a movie? Let's get you started. I'm going to go over what you need for your story and how to come up with it, using examples from real movies along the way. Oh, and if you want to learn how to come up with the story for a TV pilot instead of a movie, there's a link in the description to a series of blog posts I wrote that goes really deep on that. They're pretty cool. Now let's get your movie started. There are a lot of ways to think about stories, but here's an approach I like that I think's pretty intuitive. You need a character who wants something and tries to get it, but there are obstacles along the way causing conflict. If they get what they want, they gain something really important, but if they fail, they lose something really important. Things escalate to a climax, and in the end, you decide what kind of story you want this movie to be. Those elements cover the beginning, the middle, and the end of your movie. Let's unpack them a little bit more so it'll actually be helpful. We start with a character who wants something and tries to get it. We call this character the protagonist. You're telling their story. If they don't want anything, there's no reason for anything to change and you don't really have a story. But the more they want something, the more force your story will have. So have them want something very important. Now, most of the time they want something different from what they have at the start of the movie. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, right? They want something that they don't have.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
But they could also want things to stay the same. Maybe they like their life just as it is and they don't want anything to change. In those kind of cases, you have the world around them change and they resist.
What are you doing in my swamp?
So either they want something to change or they are trying to keep things from changing. Either way, there's tension. The thing that they want in the story is called the external goal. The external goal is usually what the plot is about. You know, they want to win the race, they want to get married, get promoted, win the championship, etc. You can think of the external goal also as the plot goal. But wanting it is not enough. They have to try and get it. Them trying to get what they want is your movie. Something needs to make them go after what they want. We call this the inciting incident. It's the thing that launches your story forward, and it cannot be undone.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Your protagonist can be reluctant, or they can be energetic, but either way, you gotta get them moving. Okay, so your character wants something, and they're trying to get it. We're off to a great start. But if you really want your story to sizzle, you gotta go one level deeper and figure out why they want it. Please stay with me, this is the secret sauce. What's the underlying emotional or psychological reason why they want this thing? We call this the internal goal. So the external goal is what they want, and the internal goal is why they want it. For instance, in Ocean's 11, Danny Ocean wants to rob the casino. That's his external goal, money. Really simple.
You gotta be nuts.
Exactly.
But what's really motivating him is proving that he's worthy to his ex-wife and winning her back.
I came here for you.
That's his internal goal. It makes the movie about something more satisfying than just money. The internal goal is really important when the story isn't about life or death. Because if it is about life or death, or saving the world or whatever, your protagonist doesn't need a lot of extra motivation. But even in those stories about survival or trying to save the world, you should give your protagonist something deeper. This leads us to another way of thinking about internal goals, which is what they need. The external goal is what they want, and the internal goal is what they need. By need, I mean that thing inside of them that they're missing and need to feel whole. Or maybe it's the lesson that they need to learn.
This place, I wanted to show them something that wasn't an illusion.
They might not even be aware of it, or they might be actively resisting it, but either way, they need it. Spoiler alert, this idea of what they want versus what they need is going to come back when we talk about the end of your movie. Whether you think of the internal goal as the why or the need, it's really important because it gives the audience something to identify with and it makes the story more emotionally satisfying. For example, in Jaws, Chief Brody wants to kill the shark, but deep down he needs to prove himself.
Smile, you son of a...
The audience may not be able to identify with killing a giant great white shark, but they can identify with feeling inadequate. In Armageddon, Bruce Willis wants to save the world, but he needs to be a good dad. The audience may not be able to relate to saving the world by blowing up an asteroid with nuclear bombs, but they can relate to the idea of getting a second chance.
And everything good that I have inside of me, I have from you.
This is also how I like to approach theme. The internal goal is what your movie is really about. So ask yourself, what does your protagonist want, and why do they want it? Or what does your protagonist want and what do they really need? If you figure out the stuff we've talked about so far, you're going to have a great beginning to your story. Now, let's move into the middle. Wanting something and trying to get it is a great start, but it's not enough. Whatever the thing they want has to be really hard to get, or else the movie is going to be really short and pretty boring. You need to put a lot of obstacles in their path to make things hard and create conflict. These obstacles can be all kinds of things: the environment, society, themselves, or another character. We call that an antagonist. Quick aside, antagonists are not always villains. If you want to learn more about antagonists, I wrote a blog post about it going in depth. I'll link it below. The Lord of the Rings is a great example of the variety of obstacles your protagonist can face. For Frodo to destroy the ring, he's got to overcome mountains, weird swamps, tunnels filled with orcs, wizards, giant spiders, ring wraiths, and a lot of other things. But this isn't just for adventure movies. It applies to all kinds of movies. For instance, in the comedy Bridesmaids, Kristen Wiig's character, Annie, wants to be a great maid of honor for her best friend, but she's got all these obstacles she has to face, like the fact that she's broke, her own insecurity, an antagonist, her fear of flying, food poisoning, lots of stuff.
Woman on the wing, I saw her. There is something they're not telling us.
Most of your movie is going to be your protagonist dealing with these obstacles, so make sure you put them in situations where they have to face these obstacles. But not just any obstacles will do. They have to be really difficult. Difficult in general, but more importantly, difficult specifically for your character. Fear of public speaking, they have to give a speech. Fear of flying, they have to fly. Intimacy issues, they have to be emotionally vulnerable. Of course, dealing with obstacles sucks. No one wants to do it. Your protagonists would rather not deal with these obstacles. So you have to come up with some way to force them to deal with these obstacles. And that brings us to stakes. Stakes are what your character stands to gain if they achieve their goal, but it's also what they stand to lose if they fail to achieve their goal. That first part is probably pretty obvious. If they get what they want, they gain something that they want, right? That's self-explanatory. But that second part, what they stand to lose, is also really important because it forces them to keep moving forward towards their goal. If they give up, they lose something important, so they can't stop. This forces them to deal with those obstacles that they'd rather avoid. You can probably tell how important that is to making your story work. Dealing with those obstacles that your character does not want to deal with makes them have to evolve, for better or for worse.
Well done! I'm sorry!
This is where stories get delicious. It is so satisfying to see a character doing something that they never would have done at the beginning of the story. So how do you come up with the stakes? Well, in some movies, they're pretty obvious. If you're trying to save the world, the stakes are the world ending. And they can't give up, because if they give up, the world ends. But your story doesn't have to be about life and death. It just needs to feel like life and death to your protagonist. Those are some of the most impactful stories you can come up with. Like Bridesmaids is not about life and death, but for Annie, her friendship with the bride is the most important relationship in her life, and losing that relationship would feel like death. So for her, it feels like life and death. So in your story, what does your character stand to gain if they achieve their goal, or lose if they fail, and how does it feel like life and death to them? I mentioned that your character needs to face difficult obstacles that force them to change. As your story progresses, those obstacles get bigger, more difficult, and more personal, until finally they come to the biggest challenge of all. This is the most tense part of your story. It's the kind of challenge that your protagonist would never have been able to deal with at the beginning of the story, but now they've evolved. Exactly how they deal with this challenge and what they're willing to sacrifice to overcome it reveals who they are or who they've become. Have they matured and grown as a person, or have they become more selfish and evil? It's the culmination of their character journey. So in your story, figure out the most challenging obstacle that your protagonist is going to face, figure out exactly how they're going to overcome this obstacle, and use it to show who they are or what they've become. Before we get to the end, let's recap what we've covered so far. Your protagonist wants something, and there is a deeper thing that they need. They're out there trying to actively get what they want, but there are difficult obstacles in the way, causing conflict. They're motivated to keep going because if they succeed, they'll gain something they really want, and also if they fail, they're going to lose something really important to them. These obstacles are forcing them to change, and how they deal with the biggest obstacle reveals who they are or what they've become. But how does the story end? Well, we started with this idea of goals, what they want versus what they need. And they can't always get what they want, but sometimes they get what they need. We can break down the possible endings of your story using the two variables, what they want versus what they need. In a happy ending or a sweet ending, they get both what they want and what they need.
I'm not sure these belong to me.
This is Ocean's 11. Danny Ocean gets the money and he gets his ex-wife back. What a sweet ending.
Exactly.
In a bitter ending, they don't get what they want or what they need. This is like No Country for Old Men. Amazing movie, but really bleak, bitter ending. But then there are mixed endings. They can get what they want, but not what they really needed. We call this a bittersweet ending. They won, but that victory feels kind of hollow. Think There Will Be Blood, right? Daniel Plainview wins, he's rich and powerful, but he's ultimately alone and losing his mind. It's bittersweet. He hasn't learned his lesson.
I'm finished.
Or they can get what they really needed, but not what they initially wanted. We call this a semi-sweet ending. They didn't get the thing they were going after, but they got something more important. They didn't get rich, but they found love. They didn't win the championship, but they matured as a person. It's that kind of thing. How you end the story is up to you. It depends on the kind of story you want to tell and the theme that you want to have. The ending of the story tells you what it was really about, what the point was, what it was saying about humanity. Stories are ultimately about characters, what they go through, and how it changes them. If your protagonist ends up exactly the same as they were at the beginning, it probably wasn't that compelling of a story. But exactly how they changed? That's up to you. All right, I've thrown a lot of big stuff at you guys in this video, so take some time to digest it. You might need to rewatch some of the sections, and I really recommend free writing about all of the questions that I've asked you. Basically, it's just you can write down all the questions that I asked and just kind of free write about them. Let your brain go wild, chase down those rabbit holes, whatever you need to do to figure out some of these answers. I hope this video helped. Good luck coming up with your story, and from all of us at Arc Studio,
good afternoon, good evening, and good night.